Hi, this is Carrie Schell from On Point Quilter. I'm excited that this week I can share with you some ideas for creating quilting designs in Electric Quilt. And in particular, I learned how I could create a background filler to use behind my string-pieced applique shapes. Last week we drafted this quilt using strip piecing and then cutting the shapes to complete the quilt. Now, this week I started thinking about quilting this. And one of the things that I thought about is that there's a huge background space and it would be great to put a background fill. But after thinking about it a little bit more, I thought, gee, I would love to actually put a fill on the entire space and then just put the appliques on top. And I figured out how to do that in Electric Quilt, so I thought I would share that with you. So anyway, I'm going to start by creating two different background fill options. And so I'm going to select Work on Block, and I'm going to do a block, New Block, and I'm going to do a patch draw motif. And the reason I selected motif is because I don't want to have a background block or a square block on the outside of what I'm drafting. So anyway, I'm on the Applique tab, and I thought for the first option I would just do some cross hatching. So I'm going to select my pick tool, and notice that this opens up your drawing board setup. So I'm going to change it to the size of my background square, which is 30 by 30. And I'm going to change the snaps to 30 by 30 as well. I'm not going to turn the graph paper on because I think it's busy enough. And I'm going to check my snap options. So I'm snapping to grid, snap to node, that's okay, it doesn't really have to be on, but it can. Snap align segments and auto join segments when drawing. Now the auto join is nice because if I sort of fail and I stop in the middle, it will allow me to sort of continue on. So I've done that. I'm selecting the line tool, and I'm just going to start by drawing a line from 0, 0 to the 30, 30 corner. And then what I thought I would do is I'm just going to go every 2 inches and draw another diagonal line. Now once I have this done, or this half done, I can use my pick tool, do a Control plus the A key on my keyboard to select everything, and I'm going to go ahead and select the clone, and I am going to rotate that. And so to rotate, I'm just going to right click, I'll select my rotate button, and I want to rotate that 180 degrees, and I'm going to select OK. And then I am just going to move that in place. Now ironically I'm doubling up on one item here, which is that 0, 0, and so I'm just going to check that one real quick. No, it actually just created one item, so I think that's fine. And so I now have basically completed my cross hatching, and I could add it to the sketchbook. Now if I wanted to go the other direction as well, I could do another Control A, and I could do a clone, and now I'm going to right click, and under the rotate I'm going to rotate that 90 degrees, and I'm going to move that in place. And once I've got that done, I can add that to the sketchbook as well. So here's a really fast way to create a background fill. Now I want to do one other, and that is to create a zigzag. I said this is really good if you're quilting on your domestic machine, but I would like to do mine on my long arm. So I'm going to do a block, New Block. I'm still going to do a patch draw motif, and I'm going to do a zigzag. And so with my pick tool, 30-30, I am going to go ahead, because I know I'm going to do this every 2 inches, I'm going to change my snaps to 15 by 15. So that just gives me fewer dots on this page to get used to. I'm going to keep the rest of the snapping options the same. And now I can just create that zigzag, right? And because I'm connecting my aligned segments, I'm just creating one basically series of zigzags here. If I use the pick tool and I select it, notice that it is just one segment, which is really nice. So I'm going to move that back here. Now what I can also do is go ahead and clone this, and I can move that down below. So I'm going to clone that again. Go right underneath there. And I'm just selecting all of them, clone, and moving them in place. Now, once I've got that last section done, let me just scroll down. I have an extra one at the bottom there, and so I'm just going to get rid of that. And now I can go ahead and add this to the sketchbook. Okay, so now I'm going to go back to work on quilt, and I am going to stay in layer 2, right, which is where I've got my my applique circles, and I'm going to do a set block. And usually I always put quilting on layer 3. But for the purposes of this tutorial, I'm going to actually put it on layer 2, and I'm going to show you why here. I'm going to take my first crosshatch, I'm going to bring it on the workspace, I'm going to use my adjust tool, and I'm going to go ahead and change that to 30 by 30. And I'm going to center it horizontally and vertically. And you can see that it is above all of these other items. So I'm going to change my order to send it to the back. Okay, so I am going to now color the thread. And so I am going to go ahead and zoom in really close so I can just see a corner. So I'll use the magnifying tool. I'll pick a corner. I'm going to pick my set thread, and if in the drop down out box, notice that the first one is a brush thread, and if I use that it will do one line at a time. Then there's the spray thread, which will do all matching threads in a block, and the last one, which is the swap thread, will swap anything on the quilt. So I'm going to pick up a brown. I've got the color, style, and weight selected. Make sure there's a checkbox in all, and I'm going to select one of the lines, and notice that it changed all of the lines that were out there. Now, one of the other things that I realized, and also notice that it's on the bottom, right? So now my quilting is going underneath my balls, which is really what I wanted it to do. Now, one of the other things, though, that I realized when I was quilting that is you'll notice that all of my shapes have basically lines around them, sort of the patches, right? And it's great from a drafting perspective to see that, but it doesn't really represent what the quilt's going to look like, because I'm not going to have black lines around all of my neutral color shapes. Well, when I was using the swap thread tool, and I'd actually used it on the diagonal line, but I'm just going to use it on one of the lines on this applique shape. Did you see where it changed the outlines of everything, including even the border on layer 1? And again, if I zoom in here, you can see that I've now added basically a quilting line around all of the patches. And I think that's a really nice effect, and probably better than just having those heavy black lines to distract from what I'm doing. So I want to make another change. I'm going to go ahead and add this to the sketchbook because I like that design. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to do the set block, and I'm going to change it to my zigzag. So I'm going to take my zigzag under my motifs, and I'm going to click on again the center square there, and because I replaced the existing square, it automatically resized it to the 30 by 30. Now I am going to do the set thread, do that same color, click in, and again if I zoom in so I can see what I'm doing a little bit better, notice that it changed all of those to that quilting stitch. So this is probably the one I'll do on my long arm machine, and so I'm going to add that to my sketchbook as well. Thanks so much for watching. For additional tips and techniques, please subscribe to my weekly newsletter at www.onpointquilter.com. And next week, I'm going to finally tackle how I actually am going to get the applique shapes nicely appliqued on my string pieced applique quilt.